move on to talk about the economy. Some of you might notice that we've got some leaflets that have just come out as of yesterday that we're going to be putting around. We've gone against conventional wisdom. The conventional wisdom is that we need to treat everybody like they're idiots and talk to them about the economy as if they're kind of 5-year-olds and the economy is a credit card and blah blah blah. That's why we're in this mess. The economy isn't like a credit card, it's not like a household budget. If you manage it like that, then everything goes very wrong because it doesn't work. So I just wanted to just turn this around a little bit. This is an index here of the countries with the highest HDIs. Now that's basically Human Development Index, and that's basically quality of life. Right at the top, you've got Norway. A bit further down, you've got Denmark. Then you've got Sweden. Now, why are we picking those countries up? Basically, those countries, you might have seen some people telling the Green Party that their tax policies are ridiculous, that you can't possibly tax that much for the economy and stuff like that. Those countries tax as a higher proportion of GDP than our proposals for the UK. So, actually, you can do that, and what we can do, if we do that, it creates a higher quality of life for everybody across the country. You know, if you go lower taxation, it reduces the quality of life index that we can give, and it makes things people more equal, society more unequal. And the IMF recently changed their mind on equality, and they've actually come around to the Green Party's point of view, which is that inequality is bad for the economy. Now, there's a reason for that, which is a thing called the speed of money, or the velocity of the circulation of money. What that means is that basically, if you give £10, or if you give £100 to people who haven't got very much money, that £100 will pretty much get spent almost immediately. That month it will go, and it will go into your local economy, and in that local economy it will then pay someone else's wages, and they'll then spend it. And by the end of the year, that will circulate around that local economy maybe 8 to 10 times, 6 times, quite a lot. If you give that £100 to somebody who's already got £1 million in the bank, it goes into the bank and it stays there, and it doesn't come out. It just goes to fund more stock investments, more investments in the bubbles, the commodity bubbles that have been getting propped up. So that's really, at a basic level, why inequality is bad for the economy, and it's also why austerity is bad for the economy, at a basic level. Can we flip forward a little bit? Yeah, that one. So that's the tax percentage of GDP. You see the UK is down here at the bottom, 37.3. Now that's not really the bottom, but it's fairly low down. Now, the Tories, and down to Labour, all want to reduce that. They want to reduce it right all the way down there. And we're being told that it's absolutely out of question that we could possibly increase it as far as Norway. Now, why are we being told that? Why is it okay for Norway, and why is it not okay for us? And you'll see that Denmark's even higher, and France is higher. So it's okay for France, but it's not okay for us. So these are things that I want to ponder on next time you're watching the leaders' debates and things like that. So let's go on to, there was one other slide there, but basically that also shows that GDP per head of capita is far higher in those countries than it is in the UK. So it's not like it destroys the economy to tax people, far from it. It actually improves the economy for the reasons we just discussed. So on the fair economy, this is basically the Green Party's idea in a nutshell. We want a fair economy. We want to tax people at the top and redistribute money to the people at the bottom. And by doing that, it will improve the economy for everybody, as we just discussed. There's an economist called Thomas Piketty who put a book out recently, and basically what he was saying, in a nutshell, it's a long book, but in a nutshell he's saying that unless you tax the wealthy by X amount, then wealth itself, the compound interest, the compound effect of interest and investments, means that they will continually get richer, and the wealth will accumulate with the rich for no other reason than they've got that wealth. No other reason. They're not doing it, they're not wealth creators, that wealth just comes to them. So one of our policies is a wealth tax, and the reason for that wealth tax, it's not that we're being nasty, it's to stop the wealth just accumulating to them. You know, we'll actually redistribute that wealth back down the chain again so that they stop getting richer and richer and richer and richer. After World War II, we actually had 30 years in which the gap between rich and poor reduced until the mid-70s. Now in the mid-70s, that was under basically a neo-Keynesian sort of economic approach where you invest in public sector, you invest to get the economy going, and they pretty much had almost full employment through that period. And wages, the gap between the top of the wages and the bottom of the wages fell, all measures of inequality fell. Then in the late 70s, a new economic policy came in called neoliberalism. That decided that government was bad, that capitalism, private enterprise was, you know, reduce all regulation, and private enterprise will run free, and the economy will be brilliant for everybody, and those at the top get rich, but it's okay because like the wealth will trickle down. It hasn't actually worked. Now, economists try to make out that the economy is a science. It's a science degree, so they try to make out that it is. To my mind, a science, you have an experiment, you put a hypothesis out there, you test it, you look at the data, and you come back and you go, well, actually, we got that wrong. Not the neoliberals. They just go, no, actually, we need to do more of this, but less regulation. Now, the financial crash in 2008, common wisdom seems to be that that was some magical thing no one could predict. I don't know about the rest of you, I'm sure there's some other people in here, but I was out on the streets in 97, 98, 99 with Reclaim the Streets and with other we turned anti-capitalists. It wasn't really right, we were anti-neoliberalists. That was when they were deregulating the banks. And that was actually in Gordon Brown's watch, that they deregulated the banks. And when they deregulated the banks, they set in store the crash of 2008. And that was what we were protesting about. You might not have got that from the mainstream media because they're not that good at picking up on this stuff. But when they say that economists, all these economists, famous economists, all go, oh, nobody could have predicted that. Just remember that millions of people on the streets were predicting that, and we're actually out there protesting saying, so then we go on to austerity. Now, where did that come from? 2008, 2010, we were investing worldwide, chucking money around to try and kickstart the economy. Suddenly, in 2010, it all changed. We had austerity. We couldn't possibly borrow any more. There's just no chance. You can't do that. That all actually stemmed back from an academic paper that was put out by two Harvard professors. They analysed data and decided that when debt approached 100% of GDP, that automatically caused the economies in those countries to crash, and they wouldn't be able to, they'd have sort of the economies would stagnate. And that kind of went round, that thinking went round, because these guys were really famous and Harvard professors, that went round, and that basically underpins all the austerity, all the logic for it. That comes from that paper. About 3 years ago, an economics student at one of the UK universities, he was asked to, there's an essay to actually check that data, and he went and redid the figures, and basically found that they'd made an error in the spreadsheet. And where it should have been 0.4, where they'd come out with 0.4% GDP growth, it should have been about 2.4%. So the whole academic basis for austerity was wrong. And this is, proven, it's just wrong. And yet, the politicians won't admit it. They've gone out on a limb with it, they've destroyed the Greek economy, they've destroyed the Spanish economy, keep having a go at destroying the UK economy, haven't quite managed it, they keep having a go. So that's it. So Green Party, we don't actually believe in austerity because it's nonsense. So we believe in taxing the people and the corporations who aren't paying tax properly, so that we can then fund investment in the public sector, in public services, in lots of areas that will actually create jobs. So we believe in our policies. We reckon will create about 1 million new jobs. Now, in terms of reducing the deficit, paying off the debt, you're much better off doing that by creating 1 million jobs of people who can then pay tax than you are putting them on the dole. We want to build 500,000 new houses, which I think someone's mentioned. Now, I work in that sort of sector. It takes a lot of people to build a house. So these are proper jobs, properly paid, properly skilled jobs that will actually get the economy going and keep it going sustainably. And they're in a sector that will reduce carbon. So everything we're doing is to reduce carbon, but we've got a carbon transition. We've got to transition to a low carbon economy, and you can't do that without a lot of people working on it. It takes a lot of people to install solar panels. I know because I do it every day. So I think somewhere people questioned our costings. I think we've got the budget somewhere. Okay, let me see. So this is spending. So we're not going to hide it, we're going to increase spending because it's a good idea. We're going to put spending on all manner of things that we've been talking about. And there's basically about £197 billion worth of extra spending by 2020.
It's each year.
Now that's a hell of a lot of money, I think, but we've also, one thing you've got to remember is that will actually go into the economy, and once that comes back to tax, so straight away, it's spending, but you get some of it back.
Yeah.
And then the other bit is that we've got £198 billion worth of new tax revenue that we intend to bring in. Mostly that comes from somewhere. We've got a graph of it. Sorry, no, next slide. Basically, the taxes comes from corporation tax. We'll raise corporation tax. The Conservatives have dropped corporation tax, and I think that will actually improve investment in people and make people invest in companies. It actually does the opposite, because if you invest in a company, then you get a tax break on the investment money. If you have lower taxes, then there's less incentive to invest. So not a good thing. Our corporation tax is actually lower than most of Europe, it's lower than America. We propose to raise it to still lower than America. So it's not actually that unrealistic, and if some companies want to leave, if they don't want to work in the UK because they don't want to pay our tax, well, we'll still increase taxes. The tax receipts for corporation tax have dropped in the last 5 years, despite the economy supposedly doing better. So the corporations aren't paying their way. We'll raise a hell of a lot of money. Oh, we've actually got some figures. So yeah, tax avoidance and evasion, we're looking at raising £30 billion from that. There's about 120 billion potential there, depending how you look at it. So that's only a quarter of it. If we can, we'd like to get some more of it as well, because those big companies, they should be paying their share. And by not paying their share, they're actually undercutting the small companies that work in the UK. We would raise income tax on the top level. The bit that they cut to 45% above £150,000, we'd raise it to 60%. We think that's fair. I think people have the money, they can keep paying for it. There's also a wealth tax, which we've discussed. And we can't really go through everything. One of the other key ones, VAT and fuel and aviation, VAT and fuel duty on aviation fuel. Now that's an anachronism from the 1940s when they decided not to put any on to promote aviation, because aviation was a new industry that needed a bit of promotion. Don't think that applies now. This long later, aviation can stand on its own 2 feet and pay its way. And if it does that, then it'll end the problem of it being cheaper to go on the plane than the train or the car. So in the back of the manifesto, you can see these figures. Go look them up for yourself. It does actually make sense, and that's about all I'm going to say. So I think Joe is going to do a talk about